Freeland was at committee this morning. And that was right before I jumped onto the call. I was watching that and clipping it. Freeland and Minister Wilkinson, Natural Resources Minister, and they were both there testifying about how they turned a $5.4 billion private sector investment into the Trans Mountain Pipeline into a $34 billion boondoggle that hangs around taxpayers' necks like a millstone, by which I'm, of course, referring to the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. They were building a second pipeline, twinning an existing pipeline in the easement that has existed for half a century. All Trans Mountain needed, all the pipeline company needed, was for the Liberals to enforce the law. They didn't. And then they thought the only way forward is for us to buy the pipeline project and then pat ourselves on the back for allowing it to go ahead and say, oh, we got a pipeline built. Yeah, well, Trans Mountain was going to go ahead if you just enforced the law, but they didn't. And now I'm supposed to be grateful that they ballooned something. What is that? 700%, and hung it on the taxpayer when it was going to be built in the private sector. Well, these two unfortunate fools, Wilkinson and Freeland, found themselves testifying on the very day that Stephen Guilbeault is announcing a cap on oil and gas production.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely bad timing, but not that Trudeau cares about what happens to his MPs and his cabinet ministers. And it's pointed out to these two that the only reason that the Canadian economy is not in a recession right now is thanks to public sector jobs, which are actually inflationary jobs because they're government jobs, and the oil and gas sector. That's the only thing saving us from spiraling into a deep, dark recession. And these two just don't get it because now they're capping oil and gas production. So we won't even be able to put oil in the pipeline if these guys have their way, which they will.
And by the way, Sheila, to one of your points, I think that's another scandal of Justin Trudeau. I've lost count of how many. He has grown the federal public sector by 40% these last 9 years. 40%. Yeah. Does anyone think we needed 40% more workers to do?
Are you getting 40% better service out of these people? You're right. And it's just to hide the unemployment rate, right? Is you just hire them into the federal government and worry about when the bill comes in for somebody else, which is what.
And who do you think those people are going to vote for, Sheila?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, it was pointed out to the Liberals in the committee today that Deloitte says that the cap on oil and gas is going to cost 110,000 jobs in the West. 110,000 jobs. It's an entire city the size of Red Deer just wiped off the map.
Why would Trudeau care about that, Sheila? The West is a write-off for him.
That was my point. Yeah. And the Liberals are like, well, these are going to create 10,000 jobs in green energy or something. It's like,
where?
So
how?
And you want us to trade 110,000 well-paying Alberta jobs for a potential creation of 10,000 green jobs. How about no?
Yeah. What's next? Trudeau making an announcement that he's giving tens of billions of dollars of Canadian tax money to a dilithium crystal factory. I mean, this is fantasy land, these green jobs.
That's what he's doing with Stellantis.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, let's roll one of these clips. You don't have to show the whole thing, but this is Shannon Stubbs, I think, the one we have here at committee. She is the Alberta MP for Bonnyville Cold Lake. It's called Lakeland, and that's where most of you think about the oil sands in Fort McMurray. But she is the oil sands hub in that they do it as close to conventional as possible for oil and gas. It's what they call SAGD. So it looks like a conventional drilling platform. And they drill down into the bitumen and then they inject steam to liquefy it, bring it up. And that's what they do. It's a very small footprint, but she is in the heart of oil and gas company. And she is so strong on this. And if she's not the next natural resources minister, Poilievre, what are you even doing? Let's watch this clip.
Wilkinson, for being here today. Of course, Conservatives always supported the nation-building Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline, undeniably in federal jurisdiction. What we advocated, though, was for the federal government to assert federal jurisdiction and the rule of law in order to ensure the private sector proponent could get that pipeline built on their dime and on their schedule. Mr. Freeland, do you agree with Stats Can from last Thursday's report that if Canada didn't have contributions from oil and gas right now, that Canada would be in a recession?
The strength of the Canadian economy today, in the past, is very much built on our oil and gas sector. I absolutely recognize the value that it brings in terms of jobs, in terms of revenues, in terms of our trade balance.
So the two things that report said that are keeping Canada's economy going is public sector spending and oil and gas production. The problem is that because your government has killed two other potential export pipelines in Northern Gateway and Energy East, and only now is getting the Trans Mountain Expansion built and starting to operate as a $34 billion liability on taxpayers, pipeline capacity is actually full, which will automatically cut production, Canadian energy businesses, jobs, and opportunities. So based on that, how can the Liberals and your anti-energy, anti-private sector colleagues possibly justify imposing an oil and gas cap on Canada, a job-killing oil and gas cap on Canada?
I'm going to start answering the question, and Minister Wilkinson may want to offer some thoughts. Look, I do think that in the areas where it's possible for everyone in this committee and everyone in our House to agree, we should. And I think that it is really meaningful and actually great that we have completed a nation-building project that both Rachel Notley and Danielle Smith support. That is a good thing for Canada. I also absolutely agree, as do all economists, that oil and gas is an important part of Canada's economy. Having said that,
my question was
it is absolutely inappropriate for Conservatives to criticize our government when it comes to pipelines. We got a pipeline built to Tidewater. Conservatives did not. That is the reality. This is a nation-building project. I think there was in the Calgary Herald. There was a senior Alberta energy leader talked about this as a nation-building project, and it was our government that got it
because of your lack of getting pipelines done. Does it self-impose a job-killing oil and gas cap on itself? The United States does it.
The key question here is who got a pipeline built and who didn't. And the answer is that our government built. It's a nation-building project that is contributing meaningfully to our national prosperity and to good wages for Canadian workers. I think that is a record I am proud to stand on.
Okay.
It goes on like that. That's the entire committee went on like that. Shannon Stubbs asking yes and no questions, and Freeland just ragging the puck so that nothing is ever answered, because they cannot answer the question, because the answer is bad for the Liberals. The answer is bad when they say, it's regurgitated social license nonsense from Rachel Notley days where, if we don't impose a carbon tax, nobody's going to invest here. You imposed a carbon tax and inspired the single largest capital flight out of this province since the National Energy Program. But do go on, ladies.
Sheila, I think you deserve a raise for sitting through these committee meetings.
Soul sucking.
I'm really, but it's part of the problem we have right now in the political discourse. It's like you ask somebody, Minister Freeland, what kind of car do you drive? And the answer is, my drapes are green. You cannot get a straight answer to a straight question. You simply can't. No. And the only other thing I can say is that It's a good day when I see Fraulein Freeland and I'm not in the back of a police cruiser after being bullarized by a Mountie that resembles Uncle Fester from the Addams Family. So I'll take that as a win. But that's ridiculous. It's
Yeah. I mean, and to say, well, we're the ones that got a pipeline built. Yeah, because you wouldn't impose the law. And it's like 5 years overdue, 700% over budget. And there could have been Energy East. You guys let that die on the table. There could have been Keystone XL. You didn't fight for it. Northern Gateway didn't fight for it. So what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want, a hero cookie? Because you hung this liability on the Canadian taxpayer when a private company was perfectly willing to invest $5 billion in this project and have it done way under budget and on schedule because they had to be accountable to shareholders. Good job, Freeland, treating this like the section of Reuters that she destroyed when she was in charge over there.
What was it? Was that like a $300 million boondoggle?
Yeah. And Justin Trudeau was like, you know who we should put in charge of the entire Canadian economy? The lady who destroyed an entire section of a newswire service through her financial mismanagement.